What's up guys, Enkiri here, and today we're going to stir up some controversy. As I'm sure all of you are aware, the above-the-knee rack pull craze has spread like wildfire across YouTube in recent history. We've got the above-the-knee rack pull, the behind-the-back rack pull, the Jefferson rack pull, all done through 2-inch ranges of motion using nothing but quad action. You've got kids who can't deadlift 4 plates, pulling 7 plates off of pins, and strutting around the gym like they're the fucking king shit. Now, I'm not going to name any names or lay any blame, but what I am going to say is, can we all please just stop? This exercise is a gimmick, a spectacle designed to draw attention from people who don't know any better, which it has succeeded in doing. Does it help you grow big traps? To be honest, I really don't know. But I do know that it doesn't make you stronger in any meaningful way, and I also know that if you don't have a big, strong back as a base of support, your body is not going to magically grow enormous traps. Just like the skinny kids of yesteryear who couldn't add a 1/4 inch to their bicep, no matter how many curls they did. If you don't have the back strength to pull big weights through a meaningful range of motion, you won't have big traps either. And not only do these super maximal above-the-knee rack pulls not carry over to the deadlift, but they also put connective tissues under large amounts of undue stress that they're probably not prepared to handle, and they destroy equipment. How many gyms have you gone to that had bent barbells that were rendered unusable because some asshat thought he was a badass for slamming a barbell onto the pins after loading it with 300 pounds more than it was rated to handle? And that's the thing. A bent barbell is not simply inconvenient or annoying to use. It's actually downright fucking dangerous. It's like dropping a football on the ground versus a basketball. Suddenly, you're being bombarded with asymmetrical, unpredictable movement that at best may cause you to pull or strain something, and at worst may cause you to lose control of the bar and drop it on your face. It only takes once. People die bench pressing every year. A bent barbell is trash. It's unusable. And if you're deliberately partaking in exercises that destroy barbells that don't belong to you, then you're being a douchebag. Do you really want to be a douchebag? So let's move into fantasy land for a second. But just 1 second. And pretend these rack pulls do build big traps. Okay, cool. Then that is literally the only thing they do. They have zero carryover to life, athletics, or general strength. And they carry with them unnecessary risks from attempting to handle super maximal loads far beyond what should be considered reasonable. At some point you have to ask yourself if doing a particular exercise is really worth it. And in this case, the answer is a resounding no. There are simply better ways to build big traps while simultaneously accomplishing other things as well. And also, not destroying your connective tissues. It's called training economy, people. So today, I'm here to offer you an alternative. An exercise that will pull your traps up to your ears and build your upper back better than above-the-knee rack pulls. Add slabs of muscle to your glutes, hamstrings, and lower back. Rev up your nervous system, enhance your explosiveness and athleticism, and positively contribute to nearly every single lower body exercise and activity you do. And it does all this while using only a fraction of the weight required to perform an above-the-knee rack pull and without destroying barbells. The exercise I'm referring to is an Olympic lift variation known as the high pull, specifically the snatch grip high pull done from the hang position. There are several variations of high pulls, but this specific variation is going to give us the most upper back involvement and create the greatest potential for volume and time under tension, and therefore upper back and trap hypertrophy as well. Performing the exercise is simple. You take a wide grip on the bar, bend your knees slightly, push your hips back and lean your torso forward, and then, once your hamstrings are maximally stretched, reverse momentum and explode. Your hips, knees, and ankles should simultaneously and violently reach a fully extended position with your torso now completely upright as well. The momentum you create will, for a very brief moment, render the barbell weightless, and you should use this as an opportunity to shrug your shoulders as high as possible and pull the barbell up as high as you can using the muscles of your upper back and shoulder girdle. Then, let the barbell drop back down to your thighs, reset, and get ready to perform another repetition. The benefits of this simple exercise are numerous, but let's start with its effects on the upper back and traps. For starters, the wide grip automatically engages the upper back much more than a normal grip, so that's a plus already. Combine this with the momentum generated by the explosive hip and leg action, and you have a perfect recipe for overloading the entire upper back and traps as you use your upper body to finish the pull. and holding onto the bar as it descends, even if you basically let it free fall, is going to put a large eccentric stress on these same muscles, which will also contribute to growth. Just look at Olympic weightlifters. They're known for two things: huge quads and yoked upper backs. That's because doing explosive snatch grip pulls is fantastic for developing a powerful yoked upper back and traps. The problem for me and you is the Olympic lifts require so much technical precision and have such a short time under tension that it's damn near impossible to accrue enough volume to induce hypertrophy unless you do them every single day, which is what Olympic weightlifters do. However, you and I can bypass this issue by simply repeatedly executing the pulling portion of the lift from the hang position without worrying about catching it. This greatly reduces the technical requirements of the lift and allows you to accrue hordes of high quality volume, enough so to induce large amounts of upper back hypertrophy, while still garnering all of the athletic and strength benefits of the lift as well. The high pull also works the entire posterior chain. The repeated hip hinging and powerful hip extension is going to add slabs of muscle on your glutes, hamstrings, and lower back. And the strength and power they gain is going to transfer into all your other lower body lifts and athletic endeavors as well. In fact, this sort of lift and the accompanying explosive triple extension of the hips, knees, and ankles complements squat and deadlift training unlike any other type of exercise. And all serious lifters should include some variant of the Olympic lifts in their training because they act as a bridge between strength and power. Just Google speed strength continuum and you'll see what I'm talking about. But suffice it to say, these exercises feed off of each other and build each other. And ultimately, the explosiveness you gain from high pulls will positively affect your ability to squat and deadlift heavy weights, as well as your ability to run, jump, change directions, level people, or whatever your athletic activity of choice is. Ultimately turning your body into a primed powerhouse with a nervous system that's ready to fire at maximal capacity on only a millisecond's notice. This is how beasts are built. It ain't with 2-inch rack pulls. Now at this point, some of you may be saying, but Alec, the above the knee rack pull is also a hip hinge movement that takes the hips through the same range of motion as a high pull, so it's just as good as a high pull. Well, in theory, sure, the rack pull is a hip hinge, but there are two distinct differences between the hip extension done in above the knee rack pull and the hip extension done in a high pull. One, the hip extension in a high pull is explosive and powerful, and the movement continues beyond the act of merely extending the hips and knees, directly involving the upper body as well. And two, no one does the above the knee rack pull using hip extension. Every single person I've ever seen advocate this movement stands up the weight using terminal knee extension. They pull their torso upright, slip their knees in front of the bar, and quad the weight up. End of story. This essentially removes the entire posterior chain as well as the upper back from the lift. And anyone who does this and stands up with a heavy weight is not strengthening their quads, not strengthening their posterior chain, not strengthening their back, probably damaging their knees, and definitely hanging on to ligamentous structures when they stand up. Because at that point, they're holding a weight far beyond what their muscles have the capacity to support. Not to mention, even if you did perform an above the knee rack pull with a manageable weight, which no one does, and utilize a proper hip hinge and extension pattern, so what? It still has zero carryover to anything. The range of motion is simply too fucking short to be meaningful. Look at it from a physics perspective. Work performed equals mass times gravity times height. If we move 1,100 pounds over a 3-inch range of motion, we're performing approximately 373 joules of work. That would be a heavy rack pull. Now, on the other hand, if we use 40% of that weight, which is 440 pounds, and we lift it over an 18-inch range of motion, as would be similar to a deadlift, we're performing approximately 896 joules of work. That's over twice as much work, nearly 250% in fact, using less than half the weight. So, doing a lot of work or doing a little work? Which one do you think is going to have more of an impact on the body in the long run? I'm going to coin a term for you guys right now. Let's call it functional stress. The positive impact that any lift has on the body is in large part dictated by the amount of work you do during each repetition, which is dictated by joint angles and range of motion of the exercise. To a point, more acute joint angles and a larger range of motion is a good thing. It keeps the external load heavy but reasonable. And overcoming this unfavorable leverage generally causes mostly positive adaptations on the body. This is your functional stress. Things like high rack pulls and other partials are a form of overload, meant to be used sparingly and in short bursts, and absolutely never with a load that exceeds 130%, and even that's being generous, of the maximum weight you can lift through a full range of motion. They involve such obtuse joint angles and put the body into such a favorable position that if extreme care isn't taken to maintain the proper technique and ensure the ego doesn't begin to take over, that loads far beyond what any logical person would consider acceptable can be hoisted. Now, the problem you run into is that your muscles are only capable of producing so much force and creating so much tension, as evidenced by the amount of weight they can shift across reasonable and meaningful distances. And this muscular tension is what protects the body as gravity and external forces bear down on it. But drastically open up the joint angles, cut the range of motion by 90%, and begin shuffling the body around in creative ways, and guess what? Your muscles are still only producing the same amount of force and creating the same amount of tension. Yet now, the body as a whole is forced to deal with double the external load. Where do you think the rest of that stress gets dispersed to? The muscles are already producing maximal tension and working at maximal capacity, so it isn't musculature. Could it be the joints, tendons, ligaments, and spine who are forced to pick up the slack and are suddenly bombarded with forces they're not prepared to handle? This is not functional stress. This is dysfunctional stress. This is what snaps your shit up. This is the type of bodily stress you should only accept as necessary when you're faced with life or death situations, not just for fun at the gym to assuage your fucking ego. I've heard the notion bandied about that the traps require a weighted stretch to grow, and that the more weight you can hold in your hands, the more they'll stretch, and thus the more they'll grow. Hence, according to this individual, why things like farmer's walks aren't great for growing big traps, because you simply can't walk with anywhere near as much weight as you can pick up 2 inches off of pins. Again, if you're a 500-pound deadlifter and you're doing a farmer's carry with 500 pounds, that's the threshold, dude. If you maintain posture, the upper back and traps are maximally stimulated. They're already creating maximal tension. Doing a 1,000-pound rack pull doesn't stimulate them any further, and the rest of the stress that the traps and the muscles of the back can't handle gets dispersed onto the shoulder girdle and spinal column. Besides, if you can hold your max deadlift for 30 seconds and take it for a 30-yard stroll, you'd probably actually still be stimulating more trap growth this way than holding a 1,000-pound rack pull for 2 seconds, even if the additional weight had any value at all. Because volume and time under tension are literally the most important factors when it comes to hypertrophy. The traps are no different. So again, training this way is highly inefficient at best and injurious at worst. Looks badass on camera though. And that pretty much wraps it up. I'm sure I'll catch plenty of flack for this one given the current tide of things, but I don't care. Even if this video only changes the perspective of one single person, then it was a success as far as I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, you do you, man. It's really no skin off my nose. At the very least though, have some respect for your gym and all the other lifters who pay good money to go there. Don't load more weight onto barbells than what they're rated for. And don't slam bars onto pins. That's just not a stress they're designed to handle. And it destroys them, which at the very least is poor etiquette. And where would mankind be without etiquette? But I can only speak from experience. And personally, I just can't see the point of doing an exercise like the above the knee rack pull. The benefits are practically non-existent, the injury risk is high, and the high pull, when included as part of a well-rounded training program, dwarfs from a yoke building perspective, athleticism enhancing perspective, and also as a general strength and power builder. And it does all of this while requiring a fraction of the weight, not putting the joints, ligaments, or spine under undue stress, and without putting any equipment at risk. Anyway, that's all I got for now, guys. Please be sure to like the video. Don't dislike it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. If anyone who disagrees with me actually wants to engage in a civil discussion, I'm all ears. Also, if you truly like the video or you simply enjoy the content I produce, please be sure to share it somewhere. And together, let's make Forest of Wolves Gym grow into one of the biggest fitness channels on YouTube. We're shooting for 100,000 subs by the end of the year, so let's make it happen. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.